When you look at a product tag and it reads, Made in China, what impression does that give you? We'll give you 3 seconds to think about it. Whatever your answer was, we can argue that current attitudes toward Chinese-produced goods is a modern convention. As we take a quick look back at Chinese-Filipino trade, specifically of ceramics, we'll discover that our ancestors may have had a completely different view. The history of objects shows how our customs and values have changed over time. This is Object Rewind. Chinese traders sailed to the archipelago as early as the 12th century. They brought valuable goods such as glass beads, silk, iron, and lead that were scarce in the islands. Chinese ceramics in particular, because of their nearly immortal properties and their role in both ritual and daily life, provide important insight on the lives of early Filipinos, given the scarcity of written accounts about them. Archaeological studies on ceramics found in burial and settlement sites show that during the earlier phase of trade with the Chinese, samples were few but homogeneous in caliber. This suggests that the ownership of these prized possessions was enjoyed by an elite few, likely the ruling class. Pre-colonial communities from the 14th century and earlier were smaller and had clearer class stratification. Rivalry among chiefs was also fierce. Trade ceramics from China during this time were status and wealth-associated goods. In other words, swag. Eventually, these polities grew both in size and complexity, particularly along the coastal areas, where majority of the trade took place. There developed more ranks within the hierarchy of elites. Multiple alliances were formed to create a web of shared prosperity. As these social and political networks grew, power became less concentrated, and the demand for more mass-produced ceramics, mostly standardized plates and bowls, entered the market. Chinese ceramic wares were considerably precious to early Filipinos. Because they were finer and stronger than earthenware, they were deemed more valuable and were always brought out for feasts and rites of passage. A chief's capacity to provide for his people was judged on the size and beauty of his Chinese bowls and jars. During the intermittent trade bans in the Ming Dynasty, when China stopped all exports, Southeast Asian ceramics filled the Ming gap. In the 16th century, imperialist and commercial interests led to the arrival of Spain on our shores. Ferdinand Magellan's surviving fleet arrived and was accommodated by numerous chiefs, serving their hungry guests platters of food on their finest ceramics. Our strategic location and the dazzling display of material wealth solidified the decision to colonize the archipelago. Once things were in full swing, Spain and its colonies embarked on the galleon trade that spanned 2.5 centuries, expanding not only our relationship with Chinese merchants and goods, but also our view of what other treasures lay on the other side of the world. Chinese tradeware and other imports weren't only personal heirlooms anymore, but commodities for acquiring goods from Europe and the Americas. To this day, Chinese manufacture is a global industry, and Chinese-Filipino economic relations remain strong. It may be more difficult to determine the actual extent of China's influence on our economy, given that supply chains have become largely international, and many Chinese have been assimilated within Philippine society, creating complex cultural ties between both countries. In any case, many things we find in our household today are supposedly made in China, although we don't necessarily consider them as swag anymore. Regardless, our economic ties are still driven by the same spirit of enterprise and abundance as it was centuries ago.